Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I'm your host, Maryann Petri. I have a brand new guest on. I have Michael Watson from London, England. He is a book author. He's also a professionally qualified social worker and author of 2 books with over 33 years experience of working with children and families. He's worked as a self-employed children's guardian for 18 years and for over 20 years as an independent social worker. He's an expert in the family court at assessing parenting, relationships, and the various needs of children. Due to his own personal experiences and a unique position as a child care and parenting expert within the family court, he is in a key position to assist, advise, support, and coach parents through their private law family proceedings and provide them with the information and skills to represent themselves successfully in court. In 2014, he wrote the book, How to Represent Yourself in Family Court, and you can find that on Amazon. It provides invaluable insight, information, education, support, and guidance to assist parents in navigating their way through the court process. The book identifies he also has completed a second book titled Family Court, Giving Evidence in Family Court. The book identifies how difficult it is to try to compete with the advocates and lawyers and barristers without receiving a considerable amount of support, and training centered on giving evidence and managing cross-examination, and focuses on the knowledge, skills, insights, strategies, and tips needed to be perceived as a credible witness. I totally welcome you to the show. Michael, how are you?
Thank you very much, Maryann. I'm fine. I'm very much looking forward to the show.
Oh, I'm sorry I kind of botched the introduction.
Hey, no problem. It's not always easy to do, is it?
Well, I try, but so you got into this a long time ago and you've written now 2 books. So, what made you want to get into this field?
Good question. I think, it wasn't until actually uh, 16 years ago that I realized I was able to I figured out why I was in this field. Um, I think, probably like a lot of people, you just get into, you don't know what you want to do, or you don't know fully what you want to do. You get into doing something. I got into social work. I didn't know why I got into social work. I didn't have a clue at the time. I wasn't conscious of it. It was a subconscious thing. And I realized later that I grew up with my mum, my aunts, and my 3 brothers. My mum and dad separated. But my first love was to my dad, and I
Mhm.
hadn't realised that. He was my first attachment. Let's put it that way.
Mhm.
And I suppose I realised over a period of time that I felt I had something to offer kids. I had
Mhm.
or children because of my own experiences. When my dad left me, apparently I kind of fell apart, and I was emotionally very distressed for a long time, for as a child. But I have no memory of it because I blocked it out.
Mhm.
Um, so I suppose in hindsight, looking back at it many years later, why I got into doing social work and working with children was because of my own experiences and because of what I had to offer. Um, and my brother's experiences were different because although we all just had the same mum and the same dad, they were their first attachment wasn't to my dad, whereas mine was, and that made me question for many years. I wondered why I was slightly different from my brothers. So
Mhm.
it was there was lots of things like that where you were kind of trying to unpick, figure out why I was different, what had happened, and in the process of working with children, and I noticed when I was working with children that quite often they had blocked things out. Trauma had
Mhm.
affected their memory, and it was only after my mum died that I realised I'd done the same thing. I
Mhm.
hadn't realised that I'd done exactly the same thing. And then it began to unravel, and I began to think about why I was doing this work anyhow, what had made me, what had drawn me to it. So
Mhm.
that's how I got in. That's how I got into it, and then how I got into doing um, court work, and that was a real thing. Because when I was first qualified, I was given a case, and it was a horrific case, and I didn't know that at the time. I was young, I was inexperienced, I didn't know what I was getting into really.
Mhm.
And that case, a child was killed by their father,
Mhm.
um, and I had to go to court, and I just didn't know what to do. I mean, I wasn't experienced, I wasn't skilled, I didn't know what to do. I got slaughtered in court. It was a baptism of fire, and
Mhm.
I was traumatized by the whole process, by everything that happened, the child's death, and going to court. And it was such a horrific experience for me.
Mhm.
And then after that, I got out and I thought, and I suppose somehow there's a part of me that thought, what the hell am I going to do? Am I going to stop social work? Um, because I don't want to go through that experience ever again because it was so awful. Or am I going to do something? And somehow I decided, no, damn it, I'm going to make sure that that never happens to me again.
Mhm.
So somehow what happened, I just went to more and more court hearings, and got more and more skilled and made sure that the things that happened to me were never happened again. And I've been able to do that. But it was a long process. It took time to get better at it, you know?
Mhm.
So that's my long-winded um,
No,
answer.
yeah, I totally understand because when you're on the witness stand, you are, I don't know how to describe it. They just come at you.
Yeah, definitely. And unless you know what you're doing, and that's why the second book is all about um, the fact that the fact of the matter is, you know, most people don't know about what court is. They go to court once or twice in a lifetime or whatever, or you know, too rarely to become skilled and experienced in at what you have to do and how you have to handle yourself at court to protect yourself, and provide a good presentation that shows you or demonstrates you as a credible witness. So the second book is really all about um, where it starts off very much about ha- you know talking about the advantages that barristers or people cross-examine you or legal people have over you, certainly as parents, but you know very much so experience, but even very, also very much as social work professionals.
Mhm.
They are miles ahead of you, um, and there are many reasons why that is so. So if you go to court and you don't know those sorts of things, and you're not prepared for that, you're not prepared for how to answer questions and give the best account of yourself and deal with your emotions and think about how you're going to answer in a productive and a positive way, then you are likely to be really, you're likely to experience the type of experience that I experienced the first time round, which is not good for you. It doesn't do you any good, and in fact, it damages you in many ways.
Mhm. I mean, that must have been very traumatic in itself based on the situation. And now you're up there. I can't imagine.
It was that I do think about it. I still think about it still because it's one of those experiences I'll never forget. It's one of those
Mhm.
experiences that live with you. And I came away from that thinking, when I had to reflect on my own practice and how well or how poorly I'd done, in actually just working with that family. And then I came away from the court process thinking, okay, I hadn't done very well. I wasn't very skilled at the time. I didn't do perhaps the best things. Um, but I didn't kill the child, and I didn't. I just did the best that I knew how at the time. Why was I given such a hard time?
Mm-hmm.
Why did it make me feel like I was the person that had committed a crime?
Mm-hmm.
All I was doing was trying to do my job. Okay, maybe I can accept in hindsight I didn't do the best of jobs. Um, it was a very difficult case, and I was nowhere near up to managing that case.
Mm-hmm.
All that I could accept, but I still couldn't figure out why was I left feeling with these horrible feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And it it made me realise that that is what happens at court. That is what quite clearly what happens at court, because the barristers want to win their case, so they don't care about how they leave you feeling. It's not about that. It's not necessarily about what's right or wrong. It's about how they can present their evidence, how they can cross-examine you to make you look to undervalue or devalue your work and who you are, um, and your character, so that their case looks better. That's the reality. That the reality is that it's about conflict, and that's what the legal profession is all about. If you don't know that, and you don't know how to manage that, which I didn't at the time, I was left thinking, what's this all about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's, I don't think that's right that they gave you such a complex case being so young and inexperienced. I don't think that was fair to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have to be honest as well. I mean, I was a young guy. I wanted to progress. I was ambitious. But I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know what the case
Mm-hmm.
like. And to be fair to my manager, I don't think she knew really what she didn't know the extent of that case.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you just and that sometimes that's the nature of social work. You don't know what you're getting into until you're into it, and even when you're into it, um, you don't know what it's going to throw up for you
Mm-hmm.
until it happens. By the time it happens, it's too late to think, oh, perhaps I shouldn't have got involved with this. It's done. So you have to deal with it. Um, but I think that's the reality. I don't, there's no one to blame for that, and not that blame helps anyhow.
Mm-hmm.
It's simply that is what you do as a social worker. But I think when it comes to court, um, you really have to be aware of what might be coming up for you, how you're going to manage that, and certainly how you're going to be perceived, um, how people are going to ask you questions, how you're going to, the way in which you're going to be able to answer those questions, because it has a knock-on effect on your reputation, on your self-esteem, and that affects not just your work, it affects your health and
Mm-hmm.
your ability to enjoy your life and get the best out of it. So it's a massive thing.
Mm-hmm. It is, and it does affect your health. And I don't think people realize this when they go into family court that, you know, physically, this is going to affect them physically. I mean, they think it's affecting them emotionally, but, the emotional affects the physical. And I don't think people are aware of that. You know,
No, I, yeah, sorry. I
oh,
don't
go
think
ahead.
people are really at all aware of it until they come out of that. And even when they come out of it, they're traumatized.
Hmm.
So they don't know what's happened. It's like,
Hmm.
what happened? What happened in there? And I remember thinking, what I must have been walking around in the days for a long time, not knowing exactly what had happened, because
Hmm.
that's the impact of it. Because you're going into something you don't know, you're not prepared in
Hmm.
any way for what is likely to take to happen there.
Hmm.
Barristers are people cross-examining; they know full well what they're doing, but
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
don't know. Yeah, and that's a really painful, distressing thing that can happen to anyone, because the vast majority of people don't go to court often enough to know about it, understand it, and be able to um, properly prepare themselves for what it entails.
Right. Until it happens to them. That's,
Yeah,
I mean, I wouldn't want anyone going through this, if they can mediate between themselves, if they're, as I've said before, two healthy, sane individuals. But when you are dealing with a high conflict personality disorder, that's when you get dragged in and dragged through the courts, whether you
yeah,
want to go or not.
a lot. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah. People need. I mean, I think that's why doing this, Maryann, what you're doing is so helpful to a lot of people, because people really need to understand um, what the court process is all about.
Mhm.
And I didn't understand that, which
Mhm.
is obvious now, but it takes a while to understand what it's really all about. Um, um, as I said, I thought it was me being, I thought, well, what is it? Have they got it in for me? And it's not. It's not a personal thing at all. It could happen to anyone. Um, but you know, you have to know what the court is doing. You have to know what your role is, what people cross-examining you are trying to do, um, and you really have to be prepared emotionally and practically, um, educated and coached to manage that whole process.
Right. And I don't think, at least the attorneys over here, are coaching their clients on that opposing attorney's personality disorder. Okay. Or
Yeah,
on how they're going to come after you on the witness stand. And people need to be prepared. And I mean, I was like you, I went on there and I was shocked at the behavior. And I really wish it was videotaped. Really.
yeah. I mean, you do come away thinking, I came away thinking, well, what was the judge doing? And didn't anyone have a heart there? Could anyone not see that I was kind of like petrified and I was scared and I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and I could barely talk. I was just stuttering. I was kind of like babbling, because when on those odd occasions when I could answer the question, because there's so many questions fired at me, I couldn't even answer them.
Mhm.
So you do think to yourself, well, what is this about? Am I here to just be persecuted? And that's what it feels like.
Mhm.
Um, because you just don't know what you don't know what the whole thing is about, and there's no one there telling you. Um, and I think even in this country,
Mhm.
I don't think it's any. I mean, I'm not in the States, but I don't think it's significantly different, because
Mhm.
you're not. I tell you what I was told, and this is after I was much more experienced, much more experienced. I was told by a solicitor. This is when I was a children's guardian, and children's guardians can go into court fairly often. They can
Mhm.
do. I did anyhow as a children's guardian, and I was told one day by a solicitor, um, they're going to open the case. They're going to they're going to ask me a few questions, and then they're going to leave me to the wolves. Right? What they
Oh.
mean by leave me to the wolves
Mhm.
is they're going to leave me to the people cross-examining me,
Mhm.
um, and so they know full well what is happening to you, what's going to go on. But no one, very few people actually tell you. And the
Mhm.
other thing I suppose it would be true to say is that, and I suppose in any defence of barristers and solicitors, I suppose they don't, unless they have to they're in court, but they're in court of one side of the court. Not often are they there probably giving evidence.
Mhm.
Yeah. So maybe
Mhm.
they don't even know exactly that they're doing something, but they don't always know the full effect and the full impact on you.
Mhm.
But people cross-examine you. They hone their skills regularly, and they're using you and all the other people that they cross-examine as people to people that they can use to hone their skills on.
Mhm.
So the point is that they become very highly skilled at cross-examining you, but they don't know they don't know how to prepare you if you're going into perhaps if you're fully going into the witness box, because they don't have to do that. It's not something they're necessarily skilled at because they don't have that experience.
Mhm. Well,
Someone who gives evidence regularly would have that experience.
right. When I was in court, it got to the point where I was asking my attorney to put me back on the witness stand because I wanted to get things on the record. And I think parents have to understand that when whatever's happening, say it. Don't hold back, just say it. Because at least when you walk out of there, you can at least sleep a little bit better knowing that you got it off your chest, you said it, and it's in the record.
Yeah. I mean, I think what I would say in my experience, Maryann, is that, and I understand that because there's lots of times it's almost like going to an interview.
Mhm.
It's obviously much more pressurized, but you go for an interview and there's things you forget to say or you don't say or whatever. But I think when you're giving evidence in court, there are things you have to say, but you have to know how to say them,
Mhm.
and you have to have thought it through. Um, that's all I would say about it. There are things to say, but you have to have thought it through and prepared it, because barristers will use it to trip you up, to reinterpret what you say, to make you look like, you know, you're the worst thing, or something like that, or
Mhm.
that you're not as good, or that what you're saying is not truthful, or whatever. So
Mhm.
you really have to know how to combat what's going to come at you.
Oh, definitely, because they really are out there to make you look really stupid on the
Yeah,
stand.
yeah, yeah. That's their job.
Mhm.
That's their bread and butter. That's what they're there to do. Um, and you know, parents, especially professionals, and people going to court to give evidence, whatever. They need to know that. It's so important to know what barristers do, and and the games, like the little the strategies that they'll use to get you to do what they want you to do.
Mhm.
Um, so it's so vital that I always say you have to have, it's not just a great attitude, but you
Mhm.
have to be in control of your emotions. And so many people, and let's think about when you're going to court, how easy is it to be in control of your emotions? Because you're already going, especially if you're going for a family thing, you're going to in relation to your child, or you're going because you split up with your ex or whatever. And it's not an easy thing to do.
Mhm.
So the need to be really in control of your emotions, to really not allow people to um, get you
Mhm.
biting back and get you angry and get you irritated is so important.
Right. Uh, To be calm. And then I hear other people say, well, if you cry, then they're going to call you mentally ill, which is true. So I always tell people just poker face. That's what I was told my lawyer that I learned a lot from. And I did learn a lot from the opposing attorney because
Mm.
I did get even with him on the witness stand and I made him a laughing stock. It
Yeah,
was at least I had, something.
that satisfaction. Yeah,
Yes, yes. Um, but in most cases, a parent's up there, and like you said, you're getting slaughtered.
yeah. Most times you are getting slaughtered because it's like running a race against someone like Usain Bolt. You
Mhm.
are running. You're running against an expert. You're not running just against an expert. You're running against an expert that trains every day.
Mhm.
Who, that's what they're there to do. And you have just come into this field. You've just, you're just come into it, and you're not emotionally balanced. You're not
Mhm.
prepared.
Mhm.
You're not, you don't know what's going on. You barely even know the process.
Mhm.
So how do you think you're going to compete in a way that's going to be helpful to you? And that's where most parents are at.
Mm-hmm.
And then, parents are like that, and even a lot of professionals. That's where they're at. They're competing against someone who is miles ahead of them.
Mm-hmm.
So the chances of you getting, presenting yourself as well as you'd like to present yourself are much reduced if you don't have that information. If you don't come very prepared. I mean, very prepared in every way. You have to know your case inside out, because barristers know their case inside out.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The barrister that wins the case is not necessarily the best barrister, but it's he or she is the barrister who knows the case best. So you, as a parent or as a professional who's going to give evidence, cannot afford to know your case any less. In fact, you've got to know it better.
Mm-hmm. And
Because if you're
also,
going to,
no, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's what I was just going to say. If you're going to rebuff some of the things that barristers say, or that when you're being cross-examined, you have to know, because sometimes they will tell you things, and they're saying things, and it's obvious that what they're saying you have to agree. You're going to agree with, because they've couched it in that way. They've asked the question in a way that you're going to agree with, and you can agree with, and then they're going to ask you a question that you're not going to agree with, or that you may not agree with.
Mm-hmm.
And you then need to know, if you're not going to agree, that you need to have evidence. You have to be able to back yourself up. You have to be able to put over your argument in a way that clearly shows that you've thought about it and you've got good reason for going against what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you might need to think through all the things of that case and come up with those one, two, or three things that show that actually what the barrister's saying is not quite correct, or is totally not correct. Yeah. So it's knowing the case and having the what would you call it? Having the ability at the time to be able to pick out those things or those aspects of the case and those pieces of evidence which show that you're all together, you've got it together, and you've thought it out, and you figured it out.
And in your book, Family Court, Giving Evidence in Family Court, you also gave sample cross-examination questions, which I think is so smart, because your attorney or your barrister doesn't role play with you.
Yeah. I think that, it was really important. I think I put it under. I did about three. I think I did about three case evidence. And it's important, I think, because people need to see. I think one of the things I did, one of the reasons I did that is because I wanted to highlight how you can respond to evidence, to cross-examination. And I wanted to highlight that there are many different ways that you can respond, but there are a few ways which you can respond, which promotes you as someone who is worth listening to from the judge's point of view, because you want the judge to hear what you have to say, value what you have to say, and treat you and see you as a credible witness.
Mm-hmm. So
I gave a number of things to show and highlight the types of things that barristers might say, might come up with, ask you questions which might be difficult or might appear difficult to answer, and then highlighted the types of things that you might want to say to give you that actually answer the question, but also show that you know exactly what you're talking about, and you haven't been boxed into a corner that you can't get out of. Yeah? So I gave a number of those different examples with different case scenarios, so that people could think about it and think about the questions they're asked, and I would give answers to it and think about and have some sort of feedback about why you might give that answer as opposed to giving another answer.
Mm-hmm. The thing is, when you're on the witness stand and they swear everyone in to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And if you tell the truth, then that really, at least over here, it really angers them when you're speaking the truth. I don't know if you have that problem over there, but this is what, other parents are telling me. This is what happened to me. You tell the truth. And then now they're really slaughtering you on the witness stand.
I mean, I obviously I don't know the actual individual experiences, but I think for me it depends on not just telling the truth, but how you're able to back it up.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're able to back it up or support it with evidence that shows it and reasons, then
Mm-hmm.
although they don't like it, you're in a much better position.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes if you're just telling the truth, which is what's happened to you, but you don't have anything to say, actually, look, I can prove this, or this
Mm-hmm.
is the evidence which is why I say A, B, and C, or whatever, then skilled barristers will easily turn that, make it look like you're talking a load of nonsense, or lying, because and then when you're telling the truth, and you're telling it from your experience, from what you can see, from what you've experienced, and then someone's telling you a liar, and you're in the witness stand, and it's going to upset you. It's going to distress you. It's going to make you angry and hurt and upset. That's not going to help you give an evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Not going to help you at all. It's going to make it much, much harder. So I think it's about being able to be prepared, having that opportunity to be prepared to answer those types of questions, which are going to where the barrister uses any possible chances or opportunities to make you look foolish, or to make you look like a liar, or to make you look like you're twisted the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. I think it's two things. One is that it's fine to tell the truth, as obviously you've sworn an oath, so you have to tell the truth, but you have to tell it in a way that always supports you.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Definitely.
Because if you don't,
Mm-hmm.
and again, it's kind of, you can't just be emotional about it. You can't just break down or cry. You can't just get angry or whatever. You have to be. You have to have an emotional state which
Mm-hmm.
portrays you as calm, portrays you as reasonable, portrays you as thought out, and portrays you as someone who wants to get the best for your child.
Mm-hmm. Even though you're telling the truth on the witness stand with evidence to back all of this up, what we're running into as well, and I don't know if you see this as much, but we're seeing a lot of collusion between judges and say opposing attorneys or all attorneys, where they all golf together and they all drink together and they're discussing your
Yeah,
case.
yeah. I mean I don't know how. I mean, that shouldn't happen. When I say that shouldn't happen, I mean that, one of the things that always hit me when I was a children's guardian, and the children's guardian are like act as the voice of a child in the court proceedings. You had to be very much aware that you shouldn't be standing by and talking like you're the best friend of a parent. or that one parent as opposed to another parent. You stand away from both parents.
Mhm.
You stand away from
Mhm.
the local authority because you want to be perceived as being neutral and as
Mhm.
being someone who's balanced and fair. And for me, it's exactly the same thing when you. I mean, quite often you see. I wrote an article about it the other day actually about being a social worker at court, and you see barristers and solicitors all quite cliquey, quite friendly, all sort of chatting, and it's almost like they all know each other and they're all best friends, sort of thing. But
Mhm.
of course, when they go into court, they do their own thing, and they be you know they're on their they show the side that they're on. But watching it, witnessing it when you are maybe a parent or even just a professional, looking at the way they interact outside of court, you think, oh, they're all really best friends.
Mhm.
And if the judges are doing that as well, or in their personal life are doing that, it just doesn't look good. There's no way any parent or parents are going to see that as you being impartial
Mhm.
and you being fair. It doesn't show itself. It doesn't show it up so well. I don't think.
Oh, I agree with you. I, I think family court lacks professionalism, and I think when we had talked earlier, I feel it should just be abolished, and at least over here take it back down to civil court. It's a mess. It's just a broken system.
Yeah. Well, it's very sad because these are people's lives, and um, again, I think in the UK that again it's so much like you have to. There's so much you have to do to prepare a child to take care of a child, um, and to meet that child's needs.
Mhm. Mhm.
But when you go to court, it's almost as like I don't know. It's almost like there are aspects of it that haven't been thought through,
Mhm.
um, that haven't been thought through how a child is going to get the best. Yeah? And you have to be as a professional or a parent, you have to be so switched on, so very switched on to make sure that your child or the child that you are representing or working for or your client gets the best deal. It's so vital.
Mhm.
You just have to be very, very, very switched on when you dealing in the court process.
Mhm. Well, when you were, I don't know if you still are a child guardian, um,
No.
but did you notice children were being coached?
I noticed. I, I had a personal experience with someone I knew who was trying to coach their child, um, not to say certain things. Um,
Mhm.
that individual was not a well person in my view.
Mhm.
Um, but they had no qualms. They would do whatever they wanted to do in order to try and get what they wanted. Um, and I don't think the court, in the UK, there's two types of law. There's the private law and there's public law. Private law is really for two people, individuals who have maybe split up or have a child, and they're going to court to ask the judge to make a decision about something, some aspect of whether it's contact or where the child should live and who the child should see and have contact with, etc. Public law is very different. Public law involves the local authority, and the public law, they look into the case much deeper than they do in private proceedings, private law proceedings. So
Mhm.
this particular case I'm talking about was someone that I knew um, was in a private law case. Was a parent, and they basically would coach the child to say, try and coach the child to say whatever they wanted them to say, and they were quite able to do that. And
Mm-hmm.
the court, I think there were one or two times when the court was aware of it, but a lot of the times the court, whether the court was aware of it or not, didn't take any notice of it. So
Oh, that's
yeah, it's not good. And then the court, then you have, the child's needs are paramount, but the child's needs weren't paramount if you're not looking out for those types of things.
mm-hmm.
If you're not taking into account that type of behaviour that some parents will, and some parents don't have any qualms about doing that. They don't have any scruples about doing that. They want what they want, and they will do that.
And that's almost that is a crime unto itself. Poisoning a child's mind against the other parent.
Yeah, and lots of I'm sure you see that lots of parents still do that today. And they're not recognizing the harm they're doing to that child.
Mm-hmm.
They don't recognize it. They're doing untold harm. But people still do that because they want what they want and haven't figured out that it's going to have an impact on the child's well-being. It's going to affect them not just now but throughout their life,
Mm-hmm.
throughout their relationships. They just haven't figured that out, or maybe they don't care. Some parents don't care.
Well,
So
and that's a good point. They just want to get even with the other parent, or they're just angry with the whole situation.
yeah,
But this is going to, like you said, affect the child for the rest of their lives and their relationships, and it's going to create another personality disorder.
yeah, definitely. And it doesn't, and as they grow up, it's not necessarily going to make their relationship with their child any easier or better either. It actually doesn't help anyone. Most of all, it doesn't help that child.
Mm-mm.
It's very devastating for any child.
Yeah, these parents, it's hard to co-parent with someone who is a personality disorder. Co-parenting can be done. It really can if you're working with a healthy, sane individual that, you know, but for whatever reason, some people are just very hard to deal with. And then all of this gets created.
I think you say it's hard. I think it's near impossible
Near
to
impossible.
co-parent
Yes.
properly with someone who is like that, someone who has that disorder or that personality disorder,
Mm-hmm.
because it's all about them.
Mm-hmm.
And when you co-parent, what you should be doing is yes, you're both adults, you've both got your different views or whatever, but you come together in a way to look out for what's in your best interest of your child. You might not agree everything, but you can manage hopefully to be adult about it, mature enough to have a little bit of give and take and think about what meets the child's needs. But when you've got personality disorder, it's all my way or the highway, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's never going to be helpful. And it doesn't, if parents had that insight and that empathy, they'd realize that all they're doing is showing a child the wrong or incorrect way to deal with relationships
Mm-hmm.
or to deal with their partners, because it's not going to be a good way. It's not going to be helpful.
No, and then these kids disrespect authority. Then they start disrespecting the parents,
Yeah.
either parent or parents. It's not, as you said, it's not helping the child. It's just making their life harder.
Yeah. Yeah. But then I think the reality is that when you're involved with someone who has that kind of nature, that selfish or a personality disorder, they don't have the insight, and they're not there to help. They're not thinking about the child.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that puts a doubly strong burden on the other parent to be able to focus in on what the child needs and what their child needs, because the other parent simply won't. And then the parent who is kind of like a has that personality disorder will always appear stronger to the child,
Mhm.
because the other parent will actually probably bend over backwards to try and do whatever they can do to make sure that other child, their child, doesn't get harmed.
Mhm.
Um, but they're fighting. Often they're fighting a losing battle, because that the to some extent, because the parent with a personality disorder doesn't care. Will use whatever's in their power to get what they want, turn the child against that parent, or make that child feel that the parent isn't giving them what they want. And it's easy to do when children are young and impressionable.
Mhm. And it puts that target parent in a between a rock and a hard place,
Definitely.
because when they do see that child of theirs, they um they're walking on eggshells. I mean, I know
Yeah.
I was. Luckily, mine were very easygoing kids, and if I asked them to mow the lawn, they'd be fighting over the lawnmower. So I really had it easy with them. So it's not like I had to, you know ground them or whatever.
Yeah.
They were very easy, but or yell at them for swearing. That was about it. But
Yeah.
other parents have a tougher time,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Oh,
they've
yeah.
got to. Oh yeah, and they've got to discipline, even though they're going through court proceedings.
Well, yeah. I mean, it is hard to discipline them when you're going to court proceedings as well, because you don't know how that's going to be used against you.
Right.
Yeah, by the other parent, or by a barrister in court. You don't know, or sometimes by the child, because
Mm-hmm.
if the parents turn the child against you, or the child wants something and and the parents used that as leverage to get the child to do what they want them to do.
Mm-hmm.
So easily done,
Mm-hmm.
so easily done. So it's a minefield. It's quite a minefield sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
So much to be aware of.
oh yes, and that's why I'm glad you wrote those books. How long did it take you to write the first
Um,
one?
First one was done very quickly. The first one's quite a small book. It's only about 100 pages, so it didn't take me that long to do. But the second one, which is a lot more, still didn't take me a long time to do. I think the thing is, when I wrote the first one, I thought about writing the second one, but I
Mm-hmm.
didn't think I could do it. So it took me another 6 or 7 years before
Mm-hmm.
I did it. And I wasn't thinking about it all the time. It's just that I was reading certain things that somehow just made it click into, just all clicked.
Mm-hmm.
Um, um, and then when it did all click, I think I wrote the book probably about 4 or 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe about 4 or 5 months. Um, but I did a lot of it. I went away for a week, a couple of weeks, and I wrote a lot of it within a 2 week period, and then I had to fill in the other bits of it, bit by bit. But a lot of it was done within a fairly short period of time. Really, didn't take that long. It was all there. I just didn't. I hadn't figured out at the time how I could do it. But then when I came to writing it, several years after I'd written the first one, it flowed.
Mm-hmm. So did you start it off, did you have an outline, or did you go through it chronologically, or?
I didn't. I think I wrote down a kind of outline, but I don't think I even stuck to it.
Mhm.
I started with an outline, but actually things came into it. There, I started out with an introduction that was just really talking about um, the court process, and how it's an alien environment to most people.
Mhm.
And then I talked about the use the analogy of you an athlete, and you're running against a top class sprinter,
Mhm.
and you've just started running, you know?
Mhm.
And comparing that really to being either a professional who's given evidence or a parent who's giving evidence,
Mhm.
and they're up against a barrister who,
Mhm.
you know, knows what they're doing, practices it regularly, virtually daily, and becomes very skilled in it.
Mhm.
Um, so I just wanted to give a flavor of the court process, and a flavor of what you're getting into when you are putting yourself in the witness box up against barristers,
Mhm.
and people cross-examining you, and also knowing that there's lots of things when you're in the witness box, you're kind of you're subjected to, because people are
Mhm.
asking you questions. You don't ask questions yourself. You're having to answer. You simply have to answer those questions. But I think the thing that people have to realise is that there are lots of different ways to answer that question. So I
Mhm.
think that's the thing that I think people need to think about. And when you become skilled at that, you find that there are many different ways to answer that question. There are many different ways to think about and prepare for giving evidence and
Mhm.
being cross-examined. But most people, because I had the benefit I had the benefit of years of experience of going through that. Um, my first, as I said, my first time was a nightmare, but after a while, I was able to, learn each time and get
Mhm.
better and better at that process. And because I gave evidence so often, then after a while, it's not automatic. It's not like driving a car in the sense that it's second nature, but it
Mhm.
becomes more easy to do. Because I'm doing it so often, it becomes more easy. There's things that I automatically know what to do.
Mhm.
So there is a link. The more often you do it, the more prepared you are, the more able you are, the more it becomes a second nature of how to do it. But you still have to be very careful, because there's always ways in which you can get tripped up. So
Definitely. Well,
that's
I'm
it.
glad you came on the
Okay.
show, and I'd like to have you back on again. And is there anything else you'd like to add?
Um, well, I want to have you on my show when I start, which
Okay.
I hope will be starting hopefully next month in
Mm,
October, and I certainly want you on, Maryann.
most
Um,
definitely.
and is it all right to mention what the name of what my podcast will be?
Oh, by all means.
Yeah, it'll be called the Incredible Witness Podcast, the Incredible Witness Podcast. So
I like
yes,
that.
I'd love to. Yeah, thank you. So I'd love to have you on, and thank you very much, Maryann, for having me. I appreciate that so much.
Oh, I appreciate it because we have a lot to learn from you, and you have two books that will help people. And whatever can help people is what
Yeah,
we're here to do.
yeah.
So. Oh, how can people reach you if they have any questions?
They can reach me. Shall I give you my um, if they're on? I can give them. Shall I give you my mobile? Is that easiest, or is it best to give you my email address or my
Probably.
LinkedIn?
Oh, well,
Maybe.
yeah, they can find you on LinkedIn, or do you want to give an email? It's up to you.
Yeah, I can give you an email. It's um, familycourtcoaching@gmail.com.
And I'll put that in the podcast notes.
Yeah, yeah, familycourtcoaching@gmail.com. Um, yep, happy to, if anyone needs, because I think a lot of people need that experience of actually having to give evidence and be cross-examined. So um, and I don't think I don't think there are many people who have that skill. So
Right.
I'm very happy to give that.
Oh, I'm so glad, and thank you so very much for coming on the show.
No, thank you, Maryann. I really appreciate it. Thank you so
Well,
much.
definitely. Well,
Take care.
don't jump off, okay? Slam the
Oh,
Gavel's
try
the
not to.
podcast. Slam the Gavel's the podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family court rooms. I'm your host, Maryann Petri, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Please join us again here with Michael Watson in the future and other exciting guests. Thank you again.
Thank you, Maryann. Bye-bye.